He keeps himself in trim by bending bars of iron. This bar is the genuine article which we tested before he began to play with it.
Beyond the bend, beyond the bend.
All right, guys, thanks for supporting the show. I got a list of sponsors here. So first off, we got Harito Bending, harito-bending.com. You're going to use promo code CHEERS for 10% off. And a portion of that sale is going to come back to support the show. So I appreciate that. You know, everybody wants to be on the Harito cert list. I haven't heard a bad thing about the quality of his bolts. I can personally say that they're the same every time. Some really hard bolts on there. You got certs for every style, including snapping. He's also got wraps and t-shirts on there. So definitely hit up haritobending.com and use the promo code CHEERS. Next, we got Jed Johnson's nail bending ebook. If you want to check this ebook out, if you're a beginner, message me for the link, because if you use this link, a portion of that sale is going to come back to support the show. We also have the Gripito Trainer. This is an all-in-one grip training tool. If you use promo code Beyond the Bend, you're going to save 15% off of a sale of $90 or more. We also have Gil, former guest, barrelstrengthsystems.com. Use promo code Beyond for 10% off. Gil's got a ton of cool stuff on there, including the flask. This is a pinch device. If you can do a body weight pull-up on this thing, you're going to get on a roster. I think that's pretty cool. All right. Lastly, we have Hard Life Fightwear. That's hardlifefightwear.com or .co.uk. If you want some rash guards or something like that for jiu-jitsu, they also got a bunch of other cool t-shirts on there. You're going to use promo code Beyond the Bend for 15% off. Also, if you want to get on a roster, an unofficial roster, hit up at Eat Chalk Get Big on Instagram. If you bent a 80D unbraced or two 60Ds taped together unbraced, you're going to get on an unofficial roster. The other thing is, if you snapped a horseshoe, I don't need a video. I'm keeping track of people who've snapped horseshoes just because it's a cool thing to do. If you've also snapped one into 3 pieces, hit me up. Or if you've snapped one laying down, there's only 2 people on that list, so get on it. Last thing, a couple new things coming up. I'm going to be putting out a feat of the week. This isn't really a challenge, more than just like something cool to do week by week. It's going to be just like some athletic stuff mixed with some bending and snapping. So I'm going to be putting that out, and the only way to participate is just to do it and then tag me in the post and throw it up on Instagram or Facebook. The other thing is, every month I'm going to be doing a monthly challenge. We've had some really good participation lately. I want to keep that going. I have some really cool things planned. So I really appreciate everybody's support, and looking forward to another good year. All right, thanks.
All right, David, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm actually excited about this because this will be the first conversation I've actually had with another bender.
All right, that's cool.
I've touched base with a few guys on Facebook and stuff, but this is my actual first conversation. So I might wind up asking you more questions.
I love it. So just to preface this, it's just a little funny way David and I got in contact. I was checking out the Stay Hated podcast, which is a podcast by Anthony. What's his last name? Do you know?
I think it's Oliveira. Is that what you have?
Anthony Oliveira. Yep. So that's a powerlifting podcast, and he actually had some crazy guys from these crazy bands on, and that's how I saw the link. I was like, oh, this is cool. This is guys into some crazy music, into some heavy lifting. This seems like something I'd be into. Scrolling through the episodes, I see someone named David Kirschen. I reach out to David from the Facebook group. I'd seen the name, and it turns out it's the same guy. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, had a little bit of a pre-bending career in strength.
So I want to get into your background, but first off, I want to start it like we always do. And when was the first time you saw someone bend a piece of steel?
I'm probably going to give you that same answer everyone's been given, that old World's Strongest Man contest
Cool.
where, like
Yeah.
Franco Columbus trying to bend the thing around his head and doing all that. That's probably the first memory I have of it. Honestly, it's tough to say because I've been involved in strength sport in some form or other for about 30 years. And it's just one of those things that's always kind of there. So it's tough to say when the first time I actually saw it or really became like aware of it as an activity was. I've been aware of Iron Mind forever. I've probably been aware of Iron Mind for 20 years, and
Yeah.
So it was always one of those things that was kind of on the periphery for me, just as another strength sport. But I was so deep into powerlifting, I never really had a chance to like really try anything out.
Right. Cool. Yeah. So David has a long history of powerlifting, reached a very elite level in that. So this is a very unique perspective of someone that has, like you said, 30 years in the strength game and is relatively new to grip and bending. So I was really excited to get you on. I think that's an awesome and very unique point to be speaking from. So if you don't mind, take
Very,
us
very,
through.
very humbling point.
If you just give us a little brief summary of your background in powerlifting.
Yeah, sure. So I've been involved in weight training in some form or another since I was about 13 years old. That's when I really became interested in it. I wound up mostly doing bodybuilding type stuff for the first few years, and then I got involved in competitive powerlifting in about the mid 90s. So I think 97, beginning of 97 was my first meet. And I wound up staying in that until March of 2020. That's when I hung it up.
Wow.
So oddly enough, it had nothing to do with the shutdown. I had kind of decided that 2020 was going to be my last year in the sport, and my last meet was the WPO semifinals at the Arnold Classic. And the WPO is kind of the biggest organization in our incarnation of the sport, which is multiply powerlifting, bench shirts, squat suits, all that. So I made it through the semifinals and kind of decided, I wasn't sure which meet I was going to hang it up, but I decided, kind of made a meet day decision that I think this is it for me. Because I was having a good enough day that I would have been able to move on to the finals if I wanted to. But it was also becoming pretty clear that my days are going to be numbered in the sport. Like, I'm 43 years old now, the body's just not quite responding the way it used to. So I was like, man, what a great way to get out. One of the biggest meets of the year at the Arnold Classic, knowing I can go on, but not really feeling the need to. I think I'm good. So I hung it up there, and then a week later, every gym in the country closed.
Yeah.
Or at least every gym near us closed. And I was like, wow, that was convenient. And of course, then we thought it was all going to be like a 2-week shutdown, and
Right.
it's gone on a little bit longer. But yeah, so yeah, it was an interesting time because it was sort of like the entire sport sort of retired with me.
Yeah.
But then at some point it started lurching to a halt again, and I just wasn't along for the ride. But I'm not sure if it made it easier or harder.
Yeah.
Because I went from feeling like a little bit detached from it to really detached from it, because now I couldn't even walk into a gym anymore. But on some level, it kind of made it easy because I knew nobody else was really getting much done either. So I didn't have that pressure to kind of keep up with it.
Right.
But yeah, so retired in March, and I had already decided that I wanted to get into grip. And it was mostly practical at that point because one of the major reasons I wanted to get out of powerlifting is I want to spend more time with my family. It's long workouts. I can't do it here. You need a gym and a ton of training partners, all that. So, at this point in my life, it really just wasn't that big of a priority anymore. I kind of felt like I got all I needed to get out of it. I was like, man, it would be really nice to be able to do this at home. And I figured, well, I like the idea of, trying to set PRs still. I like the idea of, at least feeling somewhat competitive in something. I'm not going to do that in the gym anymore because I'm burned out on the barbell lifts. So, maybe I'll just do like the fit dad thing a couple of days a week in like the big box gym and, do some grip in my basement for, kind of scratch that competitive itch. And it worked for a while. And I kind of got a little bit bored with grip. It's mostly kind of just picking up light weights off the floor in the most difficult way possible. And it's not a criticism of it at all. It was just like, it's tough going from 800-pound squats to, trying like hell to pick up to 45-pound bub lifts. It's a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I just realized it was tough to make the jump because it just wasn't really scratching that itch. And I was like, let me try steel, because I figured steel bending would be cool because it's hard as hell. It's a really good sport to kind of get down that rabbit hole, but it's also detached enough from lifting that it didn't really feel like a compensation, which is I think what kind of grip kind of felt like a little bit. It's something totally new, and it's also challenging because like hand and wrist strength isn't really something you build a whole lot of with powerlifting.
Right.
So it's kind of interesting to go this strength sport I was probably the least prepared for after 30 years lifting, because I mean we wear heavy wraps on the wrist. Like you're not getting a whole lot of wrist flexion. You're not getting a whole lot of grip work. I mean, you use it over under with deadlift, or I used hook grip. So it was kind of starting up a new strength sport, but in sort of my most challenging body parts.
Yeah.
And so I started grip around August, and kind of just went from there.
Nice. Yeah, that's so funny to just think of that. Like you said, 800 pounds on your back, going to struggling with like picking up 45 off the ground. That's why.
Yeah. And it was humbling, and I have a ton of respect for the guys that do it.
Yeah.
But like I said, after all those years of lifting weights, I was like, I just don't feel like lifting weights anymore, like in any form. Yep. Steel is cool because you're not lifting weights. You're trying to manipulate this, hunk of steel that doesn't want to be manipulated. And I kind of like it. And I like the old-timey aspect of it. Like I grew up in New York. We were just talking about that before this started. Like I've been to the Coney Island sideshow a bunch of times.
Yep, me too.
Ironically, I never saw steel bending there. I saw Blockhead need hammer bolts into his nose and shit, but he wasn't bending him.
Yeah.
And I always had a lot of good memories of Coney Island. I used to go there with my dad all the time, and it just kind of felt cool to do something that was sort of in that realm.
Definitely. Yeah. And I can relate. It's funny, but it's similar in a way. I can't remember. I started skateboarding real young. That was like my main passion. Everything, all the dedication I have in me that has gone on to jujitsu, and then this stuff was all directed at skateboarding. I've said it on the show before. And then after a few years of skating heavily, I tried snowboarding, and then that felt hard, right? But I was like, this should be easy because I can skateboard. Yeah. So it was like, and I got kind of frustrated with it because so I can totally relate to it being like just a little removed, but not further enough removed enough where you're not frustrated with your skill from the other thing,
Yeah, and it wasn't like with grip, it wasn't so much frustration. It was just I just sort of petered out in terms of interest.
Yeah.
The steel bending, it was just unique enough that and it fit a lot of those same practical demands. Like I can do it at home. I don't need training partners. I don't need a whole lot of equipment. I used to joke when this whole thing started, the gyms are closed, but Home Depot's open.
Yeah.
So it was a very practical way for me to stay involved in strength. And it's cool because it's a very accessible way to demonstrate strength, isn't it?
Oh, definitely.
Whereas powerlifting, especially multiply powerlifting, it's such a niche sport, and it's so difficult to express to people what you do. And there's really no way to demonstrate it outside of either a powerlifting gym or a meet.
Yeah.
So, and it's funny because you bend a bolt or like a horseshoe, something like that. It blows people's minds. I guarantee a 315 bench is way harder for most people to achieve than a bent horseshoe. But most people have seen 1,315 benches in any gym they've walked in. They don't see people bend horseshoes, right? So it's kind of cool in that respect, where it's kind of showy in a way that powerlifting really isn't.
Yeah.
So it's just fun.
Yeah, and most people haven't been under a bench with even 200 on there. You know what I mean? Like, so that for them to have a respect for what that weight actually feels like it's just too far removed. But most people have handled the nail.
Right, and that's why strongman is much more successful on TV than powerlifting is, right? Because a 500-pound barbell looks a lot like a 700-pound barbell.
Yeah,
there's not a whole lot of apparent difference, but every meathead who went to college has tried to throw a keg, right? Like we know how much that weighs. Like everyone's had to like push a car that ran out of gas. Like, all right, we know it's hard to pull a plane. So it's much more. I think it's much more relatable because people are familiar with the objects that they're using, and so steel bending has a little bit of that.
Yeah, and it's funny because then once you get in, once you just you bend a horseshoe and bend a nail, right? Then all of your friends that aren't in it don't care anymore, because there's there's no difference between a galvanized 60D and the Horito 12.9 bolt to anyone that's not involved in
nothing.
this.
Nothing. And the funny thing is, again, you see a little bit of that perception difference with steel. So like if like most people would see like a 5/16 ungraded bolt as hugely impressive, they might not be quite as impressed with the red nail, even though it's much, much harder.
Right.
For two reasons. One, they're exactly the same diameter. No, people don't understand steel. But the
Yeah.
second thing is, like, the red nail is made to be bent and the bolt isn't. That's a big
Yeah.
perception difference, right?
Definitely.
So
And I
yeah.
think the head is also intimidating, and
Yeah.
threat. It's just more like, no, that should hold up my house. That should not be bent
Right,
in half,
exactly. Yeah, exactly. I mean, really, if the red nail was threaded, it would probably hold it up a hell of a lot better. But
Yeah.
again, it's just that perception difference. Again,
Yeah,
like,
totally.
and like I said, it took me a whole lot less time to bend the bolt than it did the 315 bench. But most people are going to see the bolt as more impressive just because it's visually impressive.
Yeah, it's funny, and it makes sense because of like the old
And
time
we're all doing it in our base, and
showiness.
we're all doing it in our basement where no one can see it anyway.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's the difference.
Thank God, thank goodness for the groups and the Instagram during this time, right? So you said that at age 13 you started picking up some weights. What was going on then? Were you already playing sports and you wanted to get stronger because of that, or did you just
Believe it or not,
see?
I was actually grappling.
All right, I knew.
So I was into judo from about ages 6 to 13.
Great.
And I originally got into it because I was a small kid, small grown up, and so I wanted to get stronger for that. And I just started enjoying the weights more. Like, there's
Cool.
just something about it that sort of appealed to my analytical nature because it's so kind of regimented, and yeah, there's something about the weight training that appealed to me more. So that's what I wound up going with.
Nice, nice. Yeah, it's funny. Like, my dad did a little bit of lifting, nothing serious. I think he literally had a book that was like weight training for dummies or something like
Mhm.
that, and just did some curls and some push-ups and some bench pressing and stuff like that. But he got in relatively good shape. I remember that always kind of made an impact on me. So I was played around with the weights, but I was training so much, grappling, that it just felt like I'm kind of burning the candle at both ends. So it was like it was hard to have a hard strength training program in addition to the hard rolling all the time.
Yeah.
But so I never really got into it deep enough where I developed any type of real love for it. And I'm really grateful for, it sounds funny, but for this lockdown, because I've had the time to actually dedicate myself in a serious way to weight training. And I truly think it, in some capacity, is something I'll do for the rest of my life, because I feel like I'm getting a tremendous amount out of it. And it's something that I've always wanted to do in a dedicated way, but it was just always like preoccupied with this other thing that was like my main thing, you know?
It basically gave you a chance to go back and build that foundation that you probably should have originally, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. That was like, and the good thing with jujitsu is like, I, I feel like I'm at a high enough level where I was a small enough guy where I never really had the choice to muscle anything, you
Right.
know? So now hopefully I'll come back with some actual strength to me and be able to play the small man's game, but have some sort of strength to me.
Yeah, it's funny, and I forget if I talked about this with Anthony, the powerlifter we
Yep.
were both talking about before. I don't remember if I talked to him about it or overheard it, but we both said the same thing multiple times. Is when the whole powerlifting shut down, we both agreed you're going to see who really did the right thing during shutdown when they come back,
Yeah.
because the guys who just want to be upset and feel bad for themselves, they're going to come back in worse shape. The guys that were smart are going to do what they can, and they're probably going to go back and start addressing weaknesses and imbalances, and they're
Yep.
going to do all that kind of boring stuff just because it's all they can do. And they're going to come back, and in 6 months they'll be stronger than they ever were before.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I just felt like I felt mature enough to, even though I was completely bummed and freaked out by the whole thing, that this was like a blessing in a sense. It was like, I have limited amount of things to do and I have the time. So I'm just gonna like, I, s- I haven't missed a workout, you know, it's like, it's
Yeah.
just, I just knew, and I knew my training partners weren't up to the same thing. I knew that. And and then once they started seeing the steel and everything, they were like, oh no, I don't want to grapple with you when we get back. So that's even like more motivating to keep it going and stuff.
Yeah, and you know, it gives you a sense of control, right? I mean, I think everybody kind of
Yeah.
felt the same thing during this. We all felt a lot of fear. We feared the loss of control. We feared not being able to do what we loved
Yeah.
for however long. And you know, it definitely did for me. Just the act of going back and trying to like basically start fresh in a new strength board. It gave me a sense of purpose that I wouldn't have had if I had just sat there thinking, oh shit, I can't go to the gym. Now what?
Right. Right. And I want to get into the progression of like what you started with in bending, but I
Sure.
want to ask you this before we move on to that, is something that it's funny because depending on the thing, so take for instance, guitar playing, right? I grew up playing in bands. My dad taught me how to play guitar and a bunch of other instruments. And there's been a lot of times where I was like very frustrated, like with my ability of playing guitar. I wanted to just be like levels better instantly.
Hmm.
And I was overwhelmed by the fact that the process is infinite. But something with strength, and I'm going to throw grappling in there too, is like it's almost relieving to me that this is like an infinite journey. Like I'll never actually be strong enough, like there's no end in sight, you know,
Hmm.
like because I'm enjoying the process so much that it's almost relieving. And maybe it's because like the COVID thing and there was like a stop to this thing I loved, but
Hmm.
I'm just enjoying the fact that like if I play it smart and play the long game, I'll be able to do this bending, this grip, this strength training basically for the rest of my life, you know?
It's funny. I kind of came to the same thing. As a power lifter and competing as a pro power lifter, um, your goals tend to be very regimented and they tend to be very time bound. And it's very easy to kind of, it's very easy to be impatient. It's very easy to try and rush the process. It's very easy to focus a little bit too much on the goal and a little bit too little on the process that gets you there. And so when I decided to start fresh, again, at the time I thought it would be ripping out steel. I really wanted to sort of get away from that competitive mindset, at least the competitive mindset I had for lifting, and have the ability to kind of start fresh and attack this from much more of a process orientation. So again, I'm not competing in anything right now. I'm just doing it just for something to do. So it's taken away a lot of those kind of external stressors that I would put on myself. I guess I'd make it an intrinsic stressor. I don't have any meets to get ready for. I don't have, sponsors I have to fulfill obligations for. There's just really nothing, there's really no reason for you to try and progress faster than my body's going to allow. So
Yeah.
it really, psychologically, it's really allowed me to kind of take that step back and, kind of let, my response to the training dictate the process forward, not just picking up this sort of self-imposed goal and then killing myself to hit it.
Yeah. 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 It's interesting like that. And I think it's definitely, I can't speak from like a competitive sense in relation to strength, but it certainly seems to be the way people are the happiest if they're just enjoying the process, right?
If you can get there.
Yeah,
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 took me 30 years, but if you can get there, it's pretty cool.
yeah. All right. So what was the first thing you bent when you decided, all right, I'm going to try this bending? Did you just go out to the garage and pick up the first thing you saw?
It was actually a horseshoe. It was my first bend.
Get out of here.
Yeah. Again, I was at that point where I was getting just a little bit bored with grip, and part of grip also is I don't have very big hands. Like I'm 5'5", I have tiny hands, so
Yeah.
most of the implements in grip I'm not really at an advantage with. And I have weight classes now, which is intended to mitigate that a bit, but like doing a credit card set with a gripper would be extremely difficult for me.
Yep.
larger pinch implements are a little bit tough. So it was kind of like, well, I want to do something where I don't immediately feel limited right out of the gate.
Yep.
And I feel a little bit less of that with steel. Obviously, it helps to be bigger and stronger at almost anything strength related, but like my hand size isn't going to limit me bending a nail, right? Yeah. Like if anything, it might like allow me to get a little better grip because the thing's not getting lost in my hand. So
might let you close it in less hits.
Right.
Like at the end.
Yeah. So I kind of decided I want to get into steel, and I don't know why horseshoes appealed to me, but I saw a video. I think it was a Chris Ryder video. That was the first one, like one of the first steel bending videos I saw, and I just watched that and ordered some ultralights from a Farrier supply company, and when they got here, I kind of watched the video again, went down, and just opened it up, and I was like, all right, I think I could do this.
Nice.
And then I came back. I wanted to hard it. I couldn't figure out how to hard it. So I went and watched some more videos. I think I went on Gripboard, asked some people there, and so then I went down next week and got it to the heart.
Yep.
And so then from there, I ordered a bunch of nails. I think I only ordered up to yellows from Iron Mind because I had no idea what I would or wouldn't be capable of.
Yeah.
So I got and I didn't know how to do a double overhand grip, so I did only double under for the first few months. So then I did, the white nail, the green nail, the yellow nail. Like, okay, I guess I got to get more nails. Then I got a 60D, and I was able to do that. I get a 60 pin, was able to do that. And then it got hard.
Yep.
That sounds
right. Hard. Yeah, definitely.
And so yeah, so and I've since been able to get up to grade 5, which stopped me cold my first time. Then I was able to get it to about 25 degrees double under, and I kind of started petering out on double under just from doing the same movement day after day.
Yeah.
So that's when I really committed to learning double overhand, which I was hesitant to get into double over because my shoulders are completely shot from power.
Yeah.
I have no pecs left. I have so much nerve damage here. There's just nothing, and tears and all that. So I was like, I really don't want to get a shoulder surgery, but I was like, well, I got to at least try it. So then I researched it a little more. I figured out how to get sort of the pistol grip, and so then I was actually able to. So a few weeks after learning double over, I finally bent the grade 5.
Nice.
And that's kind of where I've been. Now I'm starting to work. I want to get the red. I don't know if I'm going to be a cert chaser or not, but I definitely want to cert on the red.
Sure.
Just because I think it would be cool to at least accomplish something in another strength sport, just to just kind of show that versatility. So now I'm starting to work more with 7-inch stock. So I got some 5/16 hot rolled steel. So I cut that up to 7-inch. So I've been working on that, and so
that's cool.
And I did a little bit of brace bending aside from horseshoes. I've done some mid length and some long. But my back is so messed up from powerlifting. I decided to stop that and just do more conventional training just to get my back a little bit more functional. I've been doing a ton of flexibility work, soft tissue work, so I'm getting better. So I'm going to restart doing the brace stuff and the long bends pretty soon. But I didn't really do it enough to get far on it. Basically, my first 2 months in bending was just picking up shit and seeing if I could bend it. There was no training. There was no, and I'm sure it's the same way for everybody. Maybe I can bend this.
Yeah.
And I got up to I was able to kink a bar. It was a flat steel. It was an inch by a half inch. I was able to kink it on my first shot.
Nice.
And I had no idea what to do after that. I was like, I think I really need to just get my back strong and then do some technique work and come back to this.
Yeah. There is just so much exploration in the beginning.
That's why I like it.
Yeah, definitely.
And especially being a little bit older and beat up, the fact that there's so many different ways to bend allows me to sort of work around issues when I face them. So like I said, right now my back's not really up to it yet. It's getting better, but it's not really up to it yet. So all right, I'll just focus on unbraced. I'll just leave it at that for now.
Yeah. You add some snapping into the mix, then you're really going to have a full plate.
I like, I've been doing a lot of snapping. I like to do mine unbraced. I like to do it from reverse.
Cool. Yeah.
And that's really because I see my wrists and hands as such a weak point.
Yep.
I think I get more out of that right now than anything else. So I've been doing a lot of snapping from reverse grip.
Yeah. Have you been watching any of the videos on the steel shredder group from the current steel shredder competition?
Pretty watching all of them, yeah.
Steel Shredder 8. So I just did my like test run on that, and it's a series of true unbraced snaps away
Uh-huh.
from the body. Originally, it was supposed to be above chin. Thankfully, they adjusted that because that would just be a nightmare.
That'd be hard.
But what's neat is I'm seeing the technique develop. I think Circo was one that really started doing it. Is for the open, the unbraced open, they're doing like a face pull to open it up, and
Really?
that works really well. Yeah, when I did my test run, I was sort of like fumbling with it, trying to open it like really far reverse and stuff. But those after the initial bend, the first few opens, you do a hard face pull, and that thing gets moving. It's pretty cool.
Interesting. So what I started, so I haven't seen many people do it the way I do. So what I do from reverse is I don't know if this is right or not, but I like it because it's a big range of motion. So I'll do the bend,
Yep.
and then rather than changing my grip, I'll just flip the nail around.
Yeah.
I'll grab from here and then come down that way.
Yep.
I like that because it puts my wrist through greater range of motion than I would just get from straight.
Yep.
And I think it's starting to make a difference.
Yeah.
I mean, I bent my first grade 5 in singles after a couple weeks of that.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that was reverse on the grade 5?
Yeah, I do all
Great.
my snapping from reverse because I think that's the
Nice.
most like wrist intensive, whereas
Yeah,
up here
yeah.
is a lot more shoulder and back, and I kind of feel like I'd be flirting with disaster a little bit trying to snap from up here.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think it's a little bit safer from reverse. Sure.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, I've seen Ruben do some like where he flips it over and does the reverse all the way through like that type of snapping. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I love the snapping. I think it's just like so much endurance and just like a real tough fight. I feel like it's gotten me strong for bending by doing a lot of snapping.
Well, from a training perspective, for me, it addresses the biggest weakness of steel bending in that it's mostly static.
Yep.
So a ton of tendon strength, a ton of neuromuscular strength, but you're not getting a whole lot of muscle work. I like the fact that snapping sort of it's more like rep work, and
Yep.
it's really good conditioning work. So I kind of view snapping the way I would view like sled dragging or prowler pushing for a power lifter.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
tapping into an energy system that you're not generally using on your main work.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, on the episode with Scott Shetler, he was talking about like the guys at Westside or something like that, doing like tons of like band work to try to develop the joint
I actually know
integrity or something like
know
that.
the story of how that started.
Oh, cool. Let me
Yeah, because
I'd
I
like to
used
hear
to
it.
very early in my career, I actually went out to Westside a bunch of times.
Yep.
I actually, well, really, my training partner got invited a bunch of times, but I sort of piggybacked on his invite.
Nice.
And that was right around the time they started doing all that extended work. And I actually remember one of their lifters, his name was Sonny Kircher. He started doing it by just wrapping a band around the top of the door and then just,
Wow.
I think he was doing like 100 a day. He was doing like 4 sets of 25, and his bench started going up. So after that, and that's kind of how it works on Westside. If one person has
Right.
some success doing something, just everybody starts trying it
Yeah.
to see if it's a fluke
Yeah.
or not. And yeah, that's one of the ones that stuck, and I still do them to this day. I learned them from Lou 20 years ago.
Wow, that's
and,
cool.
and they're still in there. But yeah, they're
Yeah.
really good for recovery, and kind of for the same reason. Like powerlifters, you don't get a whole lot of blood flow doing singles.
Yep.
And that's just a really good way. We call it a feeder workout. So it's a really good way to pump a lot of blood and nutrients into the muscle and tendon to speed recovery. So it's not something you get much stronger from. It's something that helps you recover from the work that does get you stronger.
Right. Nice. Yeah, that's cool. So you said you're doing a little bit of recovery and stuff. What's a normal week?
I do a lot of recovery. I'm fucking old.
Doing a lot of recovery, a lot of mobility. Yeah. You're repairing yourself. What's a normal training week look like for you, including the steel stuff?
So I do 2 bending days a week.
Okay.
A lot of that's schedule based because those are my 2 days off. I work off. I have days off Thursday and Sunday. So those are spaced just perfect so that I can use those as both as bending days because I want to be
Nice.
freshest then.
Yes.
Everything else is a lot of, it's funny, I don't do all that much barbell work now. I'm actually trying to make myself do more because again, it's 30 years of this crap. I'm a little bit burned out.
Sure. Yeah.
But I know it'll help the bending, so I do a very limited number of exercises now. So all my lower body stuff is basically just back rehab type stuff.
Okay.
I just started doing real barbell lifts for my lower body again.
Yep.
Upper body is a lot of overhead press work, a lot of pull up stuff, and then that's kind of it.
Okay.
And a lot of core stabilization, a lot of boring rehab, prehab stuff for the lower body that no one's really interested in.
Yeah.
And again, I'm really, and it's not what I would recommend a new bender do. It's what I need to do to repair, 30 years worth of damage that I did.
Yeah. Yeah.
For me, it's equally about playing with my kid as it is steel bending at this point.
Yeah,
I'm really just trying to be a more functional person.
Yeah.
So I do the 2 bending days a week. I might do a little bit of weight training along with that. I might just do it on some off days. I found I'm really able to try for a big bend about every 3rd workout. That seems to be a good spacing for me. I tried doing like a big bend every week, every workout, and that was just beating me to hell.
Oh yeah.
Like I wound up having tennis elbow, golfer's elbow at the same time, along with a pull pronator. That was fun.
Oh.
But yeah, so most of my bending work is probably going to be either technique work or snapping.
Yeah.
And then maybe some like what I consider like 80 or 90% bends. And then usually on that 3rd day, if I feel good, I'll try to go for a big one.
Nice.
I'm trying to do a better job of letting my initial set sort of dictate where the workout goes. And trying to be a little bit more like present in it. Because again, I'm 43 years old. You just can't count on your body being in predictably good shape every workout. So sometimes you just have to adjust. So there'll be times where I'm warming up and go, "Ooh, I think this may be a snapping day."
Yeah.
I don't think I got that bolt in me today. So and again, part of being more mature as an athlete is knowing when you just have to make that adjustment on the fly.
Yeah.
And from doing that, like I said, it seems to be I'm good for a big one every 10 days or so.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. So how many, or is it just by feel thing? How many bends are you doing in a workout, and how many things are you snapping?
It's generally by feel. I might do a light snap as a warm up.
Uh-huh.
So I'll do some like typical stuff. Like I might do I have a blast straps. There's basically like TRX straps set up in my basement. So I'll do some like push ups in those, warm the arms and shoulder up. Like I might do some band rows, something like that. I have a little power ball, so around warm the wrists up with that, rice sticks, stuff like that. I'll even take a hot shower before I train, just because I'm home and I can. That does a really good job of just warming my body up, getting the blood flowing.
Oh, nice.
From there, I'll probably do a couple of snaps from reverse with a timber tie.
Yep.
Just something to kind of warm up. I might do one for each hand. Then I'll start to get into whatever grip I want to do that day. And sometimes I decide to grip that day. Like I thought Monday's workout was going to be a double underhand day. It was pretty evident early on it was not going to be a double under day.
Yeah.
And so some days it's going to be I try to do like 4 or 5 reps with something in like that 80-90% range.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just going to be some snapping, and other times I'll feel good and I'll try to just work up to something from whatever grip I'm doing.
Yeah.
I generally do double under for the big ones now because I want to get that red nail.
Yeah.
But I am trying to do enough of the other grips to stay fairly well rounded. Like I said, I only snap from reverse.
Yep.
Because I think that'll build up the tissues fastest.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, and it's funny, like a great case for practicing the different grips is that you can see how they sort of feed each other a little bit.
Yeah.
Like my double under, I started adjusting my double under form from what I learned from like double over, because my first double under bends were very strict, like maybe like an inch of space and that sort of old timey.
Sure.
Now I'm seeing how to like work the hands out a little bit and treat it a little bit more like a reverse pistol grip.
Yep.
So learning double over has definitely helped my double under training a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
And reverse,
cool.
I think, just makes your hands and arms strong. So that's the best case for reverse grip. I think that's
Definitely.
the best training bend at the time, at least for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I've been doing heavy stuff for my arms and shoulders my whole life, but the wrists and hands really needed to catch up to everything else.
Yep. Yeah. I find reverse to be the hardest for me, for sure. I've heard it's always mixed. Generally people can do the biggest stuff double overhand if they can figure out the flexibility, but then it's almost 50-50. I'd almost maybe give it like 60-40 to reverse for people's secondary style that they feel the strongest in.
Mhm.
Um, and I'd love to have someone break it down, what actually, like, in what ways those people are stronger or not, or if it's just a comfort thing or not. I just find it so interesting. Uh,
I can tell you what it was for me.
okay.
So for me, double under was intuitive when I started because it allowed me to use my strong shoulders and traps and back,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
which I had built from powerlifting. Whereas reverse was very much, wrist and form, which is relatively undeveloped.
Yeah.
So for me, it was just a case of where I was strong coming from powerlifting.
Uh-huh.
And that's why I like to do a lot of my snapping work from reverses, because again, it sort of, I think it'll help bring that up to speed.
Yeah, definitely. So have you done any leg crushing, whether it's
Oh yeah,
snapping or just do it?
with the horseshoes, yeah, I haven't done any snapping yet.
Okay.
I do it mostly for horseshoes. I've done spikes.
Yep.
I want to work up to an 8. Well, I'd like to work up to 6-inch wrench, but I'd like to work up to an 8-inch wrench.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a little bit tough now because of the back.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I remember the last time I tried it, I was trying to use the knee,
Yep.
and the wrap slipped off and
Uh,
caused the worst fucking back spasm. And I'm like, you know what?
oh no.
I gotta give myself some time to condition to this. So that's what I'm doing now.
Yep.
Kind of lost where I was.
I was curious to see how that style would be, because obviously with your squatting background you have extremely strong legs, and I know it's a
Yeah,
different range of motion with the pinching in with it. I just wonder how that would develop for you.
it developed a lot faster once I learned how to stay tight during it. And
Okay.
obviously I know how to stay tight during a big squat, but when you're relearning a movement, sometimes it's
Yeah.
tough to bring that back in. So I think it was a Don Cummings video I saw where he just
Okay.
sort of casually benches a 10-inch wrench
Yeah,
in
yeah,
his
that was
garage.
the first tip video Don was kind enough to do. And when I came up with that idea, I was like, can you send a leg crush video? Because you're the man with that, obviously. And yeah, he just bent a 10-inch wrench like it was nothing at all.
Yeah, that was very helpful. Like I said, I was able to heart the horseshoe pretty quickly from the leg crush.
Nice.
I think it'll get a lot better once I build the technique.
Yeah.
But I'm still in that sort of weird space, and I think this is important for any strength athlete that tries to switch sports. You have to remember that when you're switching strength sports, you're coming at it with a super souped up central nervous system,
Yeah.
but without the tissue strength necessary.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I was. So I've had to be really cognizant of the fact that I already have that like super crazy hopped up central nervous system, but I don't have the tissues that go with it. So it's sort of like putting a Corvette engine in a little Honda. It's going to run like hell for the first few months, but eventually it's just going to shake itself to death. And that's why I wound up started getting so beat up, is like, man, I'm just putting like an 800-pound squat's worth of effort into these tiny little tissues, and they're just not up to. Like when I get a new watch, I have to take links out of the bracelet. Like I have a tiny frame. So I realized very quickly that my biggest limitation was I'm just going to rip myself to shreds if I don't really devote a lot of work to strengthening those tissues. And I
Yeah.
still do. I do a ton of blood flow training. I do a ton of like rice digs. I do a ton of extensor work. Sledgehammer work was very helpful to me in the beginning.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me it was like some people lack the central nervous system. I lacked the tissue strength. So that's really what I've tried to do my best to build up.
Yep. Yep. And I was noticing when I was trying to do like push the envelope every bending workout, right? I was just like, I felt like
How'd
I
that
could do
work?
it. Yeah. I felt like I could do it for a while. Like I had a good month, and then I felt like I almost had a month where I couldn't even do anything. Like I could do just like the normal day-to-day stuff, but I don't think I had like a PR type bending session for like a whole month. And I was just like, man, what happened
Were
to
you
me? And
trying?
I just,
Were you trying the same style week after week?
no, I was searching for anything. I just, so I did a thing for Bud Jeffries. for the Noah's Army Foundation back
Mhm.
on November 14th. And leading up to that, for training for that, I had conquered a bunch of stuff that I felt really good about, and I was feeling really strong. And then I did the snapping all those grade eights. And I swear it took like, and then I maybe took 2 days off of training and went right back into trying to like push the envelope again. And I swear it was like a month of just feeling so sad and just like trying to, I wasn't smart enough yet. I was just beating myself, just trying like to grind through it, and talking to a lot of people that were advising me to do otherwise. But thankfully, I think I did learn my lesson there and realized I cut the bending back down to 2 days a week about, and I'm if I'm not feeling it, I'm not trying to go for a big bend. It's I have my whole life to do it.
Yeah, for me, the 60 penny is a really good indicator.
Yeah,
Like I'll know by how a 60 penny goes down if I've got it that day, because it's easy enough that I can do it no matter
yeah,
what. Like even on a bad day, I can do it. So I'm not gonna like rip something off trying to do it, but at the same time, it's gonna give me that feedback to know if I really have it that day.
yeah,
And obviously, there's some variance. So if one's tough, I might try another one just to make sure. And like usually by how that goes down, I'll know if it's going to be more of a top end day or more of a conditioning. But here's something interesting with that Noah's Army thing. I don't know if anyone's talked about this before, but there's a big difference between a training max and a meet max. And so for something like, even though it's still virtual, it's still just you in your garage or
yeah,
basement or whatever. It's still going to be a higher state of arousal because something is on the line,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
A little bit more than normal. And in powerlifting, we recognize there's a difference between a max in the gym and the max on the platform. The max on the platform is done at a much higher state of arousal, which
yeah,
means you're tapping into that nervous system even more than you normally would, because there's all these outside influences kind of pushing you to do better, right?
yep, yep,
So even though you're training on your own, I could see it having a little bit of that effect, because you're sending this in, people are going to watch it.
yeah,
There's
yeah,
more there, and that's going to bring up that state of arousal a little bit. But you also have to keep in mind that since that's a greater stressor in their nervous system, it's going to take you longer to recover. And that's
yeah,
one of the main reasons powerlifters deload before and after the meet. It's also to recover, but the deload after the meet is because you've just beat the hell out of yourself. And part of the reason you beat the hell out of yourself is you reached a level of arousal that you don't normally reach.
yeah,
So that might have been another reason why you were kind of tapped out after that, is because you're not used to working at that level.
yep, yep. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I've heard stuff like that, like you never program off your like meet PR or anything
Well,
like that.
you do in powerlifting, you do program off your meet PR,
Oh, really?
but
Okay.
the percentages should reflect that it's a meet PR.
Okay.
So you're not
Gotcha.
looking to beat your meet PR in training. You might do percentage work off those meet numbers, but yeah, it's understood that you're not going to be capable of just walking into the gym and doing your best meet squat. If you can,
Yeah.
that just means you're a shitty meat lifter.
Yeah. 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 Um, so speaking about PRs and stuff like that, what do you what can you say about the mental aspect of like pushing a PR bend versus your experience in powerlifting? Like, how is it the same or different? I'd just like to know what you can say on that topic.
I think steel is probably harder psychologically, because in powerlifting, you got to remember 2 out of the 3 lifts have an eccentric component. So you actually have a chance to sort of feel that weight out before you go, right?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
With bending, you don't, right? There's no flexing the thing before you go. It's either going to
Yeah.
bend or it's not. So if you're not really ready to go at that instant, like even in the deadlift, you're going to flex the bar a little bit before you go. You sort of pull yourself into position on it. Like
Uh-huh.
there's a little bit of play before you get going. With the steel, there's just nothing. Deadlift's my least favorite lift, by the way, for that reason. So I say the mental component is probably a little bit greater with steel, just because there's just no way to prepare for that. There's just no way to feel that steel out. Like you just have to pick it up, do whatever you have to do in your mind, do your little thing, or whatever you do before the bed, and then you're just gonna go. But there's no really getting a sense of it before you do it.
No,
Like you just have to be ready to do it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about it like that, but that does make sense.
And sorry to cut you off, but with the power lift, it becomes pretty evident if you're going to be able to finish the lift or not, right? Like you're going to get it up and then it comes back down. With steel, you might have to strain on that thing for 3, 4, 5 seconds before it goes, and you got to have the intestinal fortitude to be able to really stick with it. Whereas in powerlifting, that's not quite as big of a factor.
Yep. Yeah, it's funny. I have like this mental image with like the bending stuff that it's like you're almost like it sounds pretty wacky, but it's just like you're like exploring this system of like caves or something, and then it's like a light goes on, and then like you see that you see the pathway like ahead. It's like you get to this point where you don't know if you have it in you, and then it moves and you're like, okay, that's where I need to get to again. And then it's like, and somehow then you can conjure up to get back to that level to make it move that next little bit. It's just the
let's be honest,
sensation.
And let's be honest, that's a feeling that keeps us in it, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
That's really what the whole thing's about.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not really that we absolutely need to bend this nail. It's the feeling that you get from bending the nail.
Yep.
And what you have to overcome to do it.
Yep. And then I also feel like it's pretty neat that because like once you get there, you're like, oh, okay, that's how it feels to make that move, you know. And not that you could do it every workout from then on, but you also personally, I just feel like, okay, well, I had the power to do that. Like so now, like we just leveled up a little bit. So it's pretty cool like that. So how about recovery and nutrition? Let's talk about power, like someone that's lifting super heavy, and what you do in those things for bending as well.
So powerlifters are notoriously horrible eaters, or at least they have been historically. We're getting a lot smarter in that respect. I ate super clean towards the end of my career because I decided to drop weight classes from like my, I'd say from about 2016 I started losing weight. I had gotten up to I did one meet in the 242 class.
Wow.
So I was walking around at 5'5", 240 pounds. I didn't even lift that well. I didn't even lift that well at that weight. So I was 39 years old, and I decided, you know what? I probably don't want to bring all this weight into my 40s. I've been a trainer a long time. I kind of know how that story plays out. I've seen countless lifters decide they're going to lose the weight when they stop lifting, and then they just don't. So I figured, let me make this a competitive element for myself and make it more about the weight class. Because if I make it about the contest, I'll do it.
Yep.
If I do it to stop from dying, I won't for some reason, but I'll do it to try and win a fucking powerlifting meet.
Yep.
So my diet was super, super clean. I dropped down to 165 for my last meet.
Oh, really?
242
cool.
A few years prior. Yeah.
Nice.
I did my best lifting at 181, but that last year I kind of wanted to leave the sport knowing I beat the shit out of myself, so I wouldn't be that eager to get back into it.
Yeah.
So I did the super strict thing, dropped down to 165. So my diet was like squeaky clean that last year. Now it's kind of, I just try to eat good food. I'm hovering at about 175 right now, which I think is a good weight for me. I don't eat super clean, but I try not to eat much crap either.
Yeah.
As far as recovery, the least talked about recovery method is not beating the hell out of yourself in the first place.
Yep.
For me, recovery starts with efficient training, basically doing everything you need to do and nothing you don't. And it's a very tough balance to find. So how do I train enough to get that stimulus to improve, but without going past that and eating into recovery more? So that's really where I think recovery starts.
Yeah.
Past that, like I said, I do a lot of very, very high rep blood flow training to just kind of force blood into those tissues.
Nice.
I forget his name offhand, but your coach was talking a lot about that with the band extensions and this and that. Like I said, I like snapping like light timber ties for that reason. It forces a lot of blood into the muscles. Rice jigs are great for that. Band work is great for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a big supplement guy anymore, just because again, I'm kind of burned out on them.
Yeah.
But they do help. Not as much as people think, but they do help.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm big on sleep.
Yeah.
I try very, very hard to reserve myself at least 8 hours of sleep. I also have a pretty physical job. I do assisted stretch now for a
What's
living.
that?
It's one-on-one stretching. So the type of stretch that you
Okay.
might get from a PT or an athletic trainer.
Oh, nice.
I do that full time.
Okay.
So I'm doing probably about 6 to 7 hours of assisted stretching a day,
Oh, nice.
which is a lot of static holds, a lot of bracing. So it's a lot of work. So I really need a lot of sleep to recover from both that and feel better.
Yep. You know, I didn't know that was a thing. Well, I knew that was a thing for athletes, but I didn't know that was a thing for like the general public until I was watching that show Billions. Have you seen that show?
Yeah, I don't watch the goddamn show, but people, ever since I started doing that, everyone tells me about
funny.
that one show. Yeah, it kind of popped up fairly recently. So my company is called Stretch Lab.
Okay.
They've been around since about 2014. The style of stretching we do has been around forever.
Yeah.
It's just simple assisted stretching with PNF. So the style has been around forever, but this is the first time it's really been offered, to the general public as a standalone service.
Yeah.
I'm more booked doing this than I ever was as a trainer.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I was saying to somebody, and it's like, this is from a total novice's point of view, but I just feel like I see the trends and things. And I'd say like if mobility stuff was like a stock, the time to get in would be now, because I feel like with CrossFit and stuff like powerlifting or that type of lifting got pretty popular, and like even like people that I would never think cared about squatting or anything are squatting, and so I foresee people hitting that really heavily, and then the need for some more mobility to come in. So I'm seeing on Instagram more mobility coaches popping up and stuff like that.
Well, also, if you think the real fitness boom started around the 80s.
Yep.
And it's been sort of building ever since. So the 80s was around the time people really started like training.
Yeah.
And now they're all old and their backs hurt.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they already value fitness, and this is sort of an easy jump from doing fitness to that. We found it's been really good for people who've been sedentary as sort of a first step back into fitness.
Oh, nice.
Because and the reason I think I'm more successful doing this is a lot of the people that would come to me as a trainer, I would eventually lose because they weren't really ready for it in the first place. Like these are people that have done nothing. Yeah. They're tight, they're in pain, and I'm like barking orders at them to lift weights. Like no shit, they're gone. But for people to come to me for assisted stretch, I basically lay them down. I stretch everything out. It feels good. They feel good when they're done. And after a while, they start to sort of venture out into fitness, kind of on their own because they feel better.
That's cool. Yeah.
So it's been pretty cool. And it's been hugely helpful to me because I've taken a lot of tools out of the toolbox to, get myself healthier because I'm old and my back hurts too.
Yeah, absolutely. My mom and stepdad are both occupational therapists. I got to ask them if they've heard of this. Yeah.
They might kind of look down on it because it's sort of.
Oh, really?
Well, there's some companies that don't do quite as good a job of it.
Oh, okay.
Like for us, you need to have like a significant history in body work. So most of our people are either massage therapists or certified trainers or people with some sort of background in this. We've had chiropractors, we've had PTs work for us. So some of the companies, I don't think it's quite as difficult to get up and running and start doing it.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those industries that needs to sort of pare itself down a little bit to really be successful.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's sort of at that point, at that growth phase now, where the more companies that are doing it, the bigger sort of footprint it makes, and then we'll sort of kind of pare it back down to the ones that are doing it the best.
That's cool. Yeah. All right. So we before we start getting into the rapid fire, you mentioned red nails a goal. What other goals we got?
That's kind of it, and I think that that goes more into what I said earlier about really wanting to just embrace the process.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that process is, not letting my ego write a check that my body can't cash.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So, like I said, I really want to do the red nail just because it's one of those sort of recognized achievements in strength on the general sense.
Yeah.
Probably it doesn't mean as much as it did within the bedding community because there's much higher certifications.
Yeah.
I'm going to kind of see how it goes. I think I definitely like to devote a little more time to long and brace bending.
Cool. Yeah.
Like after I get to that red, just because it's fun and I like to do it. And a lot of my training now is to get myself healthier to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't want to start putting all these just sort of like random goals in place, because I really want to see how my body develops into this.
Yep.
So I'm kind of, I'm not really working towards anything specific, but I'm also not ruling anything specific out. Like, I don't think I'm going to be a cert chaser.
Yeah.
But the odds are great that once I do get that red nail, what this big bastard is like. It's just sort of a dude thing, right? We just can't help it.
Yeah. I'd like to see you get on the Horito site. That's where it's at. Horito's
that's what I hear.
Horito's the sponsor.
Oh, that's right.
Anyone can use Cheers, promo code Cheers, and go save 10% and support the show.
Oh, way to work it in. You're getting good.
And he just opened it up where there's barehanded cert, there's reverse, double underhand, single pad, braced bend, which I just got my package yesterday, and I was able to get on the brace bend cert, so I'm happy about that.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the double overhand, and we got cash bounties for those 10.9 and the 12.9 bolts. You also get a digital certification, like a cool printout thing. If you do the 8.8, some of those bigger ones. But there's really levels for everybody once you get a good bending foundation. I know right off the top you could get the 4.8 and the A4 and potentially the A2 if you get a package from Horito.
Well, we'll see. I think I need to ice my elbows after talking about this. We'll see.
Yeah. And then there's just so much stuff on David Horn's site. I mean, you could scroll through that for 2 days and come up with all kinds of stuff.
So my Christmas present this year was actually the wrist developer.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. My wife always gets pissed because she never knows what to get me. And I'm the asshole that I'll just go out and get whatever I want, like a couple weeks before. It's just because I forget that Christmas is coming. But so my son actually does this with me now and again.
Yeah, cool. Mine too.
Yeah, actually a couple of those up there, the ones toward the end are actually his.
Yes, that's great.
So I forgot where I was going with that.
Just David Horn stuff.
That's right. So he wanted to get me a gift related to bending. So I had my wife pick up a wrist developer for him.
Oh, that's great. Great. Yeah. I haven't used that. I heard it always comes up. I got to get one of those things. One of my shipments coming up. Pretty
cool. I like it a lot as a finisher. It's a good way to get like a lot of extra reps in.
Yeah.
Like just without having to having to wrap and rewrap a bunch of nails.
Yeah. I did get a power twister up on Adam Glass's recommendation. One of those big. Those are cool. And that
they've been around like since the 80s, haven't they?
Yeah.
The thing with the spring mill. Those have been around a long time.
Yeah, that I can feel that developing, especially double under and the reverse positions. You can do double under, but it'll pinch the hairs out of your chin.
It's the only place I haven't left.
Yeah. But it's cool. And so one thing I wanted to ask, just because I'm starting to get into this, and it seems to be like on the periphery of all this stuff. Do you have any interest in getting into any of the stone lifting stuff, or have you done any of that?
I haven't. I do not foresee that in the near future.
Okay.
Deadlift is always my least favorite lift. And it's part of what my strength. Like, I was always a very, very hip dominant squatter.
Okay.
So I was always a very good squatter. I had a decent sumo pull. Conventional was always that just lower back complex was never where I was really strong. And I think part of the reason I'm having so much back trouble now is I hammered a little bit too hard, trying to catch up to everything else. So I don't know if I'll be picking up any stones anytime soon.
Okay.
I respect the hell out of people can do it. It's super hard. Let me answer that question again when I'm healthy.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna come back to you because it seems to be related. It's like everybody's got.
It all kind of fits into that sort of old timey.
Yeah.
Type strongman thing, which again I think is really cool.
Yeah.
but I think, yeah, I think I might wait on that for a little while. If I
All
can get
right.
into some good brace bending, if my back gets healthy enough to really get into some good brace bending,
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna be pretty happy.
Nice. All right. So before we get into the rapid fire, my good friend Dave Kobinski, my
Mhm.
barber, really strong guy. He had heard, or he wanted your take on if geared, like with the suit and whatnot, increases your raw lifting.
It can. It depends on the application.
Okay.
So, and for those that don't know, multiply powerlifting is sort of a one subset of powerlifting where we wear very tight polyester or canvas gear that assists us in the lifts, essentially. So what it does, so like a bench shirt, I think a lot of people are maybe familiar with the slingshot now, like the Mark Bell
Yeah.
slingshot,
Yeah.
which is basically just a strap that you wear over your arms, and it provides elastic resistance to the bar on the way up. So that would be very close to a bench shirt. The difference is the bench shirt is much stronger with a lot less elasticity. So the lift is much more technically difficult.
Okay.
A squat suit is basically it's like a very stiff polyester or canvas singlet. So if you ever try to like squat down to pick something up in a very tight pair of jeans, it's like that times a million. So what it does is it allows you to lift a lot more weight, but the technique is also much, much harder. I would say that gear does have the potential to improve your raw lifts if used properly, because handling those heavier weights week after week, it really does amp up your central nervous system quite a bit, quite a bit more than raw lifting might. And if you're using a conservative amount of gear, like just a pair of like squat briefs or something like that, it can actually keep you a lot healthier.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, theoretically, if you can. Now, if you're going to focus on multiply powerlifting, it can make you stronger, but it won't be immediate. So you're not going to do like a 12-week cycle in gear and then go back to raw and expect to be higher. I think ultimately you could get higher because you've had so much heavier weights on your back, but you're going to have to reestablish the motor patterns to do it raw.
Gotcha.
Like I know a couple of lifters who've done fairly well going back and forth, but they're usually very, very talented and very, very smart.
Okay.
Because they know how to sort of negotiate that difference, and they have, they're talented enough that their bodies can kind of snap back.
Yeah. Like just thinking of it kind of made sense because I have heard people like Bud Jeffries and other people talk about just unracking some super heavy weight. Nothing that you can.
Yeah, like partial reps, unracks. Like we do a ton of lockout strength and bench reps, which all happens to be very good for brace bending because you're doing a lockout. Your base, I mean, and I think one of the reasons horseshoes came relatively easy to me at the start, and I was able to do it in my first tries because I had good tricep strength and you really knew how to.
Yeah.
I mean, my bench press in a bench shirt was at 181. I did 620. And again, it's in a bench shirt. It's not at all comparable to a raw bench.
Yeah.
But I'm still unracking and I'm still locking out, 620. So you build a very, very high amount of lockout strength there. So in that sense, geared lifting does have that same effect as like a lot of top end power rack training would. It just gets you comfortable lifting stupid heavy weights.
Right. Yeah. As I said to somebody leading up to this, I was like, if you put 800 pounds on a 180 pound guy's back, I don't care what he's wearing. That's an impressive thing.
Well, you know what it's like, the comparison, because I mean, multiply lifting gets shit on more than any other strength sport I know. And I get it. Like it's, you have this sort of sport within a sport, which is much less popular than raw, which is sort of the main sector of the sport now. It wasn't always, but it is now. And it's so tough to get people to understand gear because you really can't unless you've been in it. So people don't really understand what the challenges of it are, but they see like a smallish guy like me squatting 800 pounds. They think, all right, something's up.
Yeah.
And something is up. But a good comparison I make is, a guy who can bend the gold nail in double wraps.
Yeah.
Can he do it barehanded? Probably not, but he's still really strong for being able to do it in doubles, right?
Yeah.
So if you're looking at multiply lifters, obviously they can't do that raw, And they wouldn't be as good as the best raw lifters because it's not really what they focus on. But looking at it in the context, seeing how high they're ranked, you can tell who's strong and who's kind of not.
Interesting.
So I'd say like beefed up wraps would probably be versus bare hand, probably be a pretty good comparison.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
And also listen, we say the wraps are for hand protection, but we know we're getting extra leverage on those things. It aids us in the lift, of course it does.
No
But
doubt.
judge within that context, there's a clear hierarchy of who's stronger. And just because the guy uses double wraps doesn't mean he's not strong. It just means he's choosing to focus on this style of bending, and that's a little bit like what multiply powerlifting is about.
Gotcha. Yeah. My other friend, good training partner, Kerry Boughton. He's heavy. He put on a ton of weight, got strong as hell. He used to be like my size. Now he's like 220, fully into the powerlifting thing. He's actually competing. He's a corrections officer, and there's some type of like hierarchy within law enforcement for the country within powerlifting. And
there is a police fire division in powerlifting.
Right. So he's like right chasing at the top, if not was the top, and like trying to get back to the top. So he had a question about, he was saying him and his training partner were arguing about whether a squat should be judged with the walkout or without. I can't look at my phone right now because I'm using it, but I'm paraphrasing this. So they was like talking about that the walkout, they were trained to walk it out, but then that's not really like part of the movement. So we wanted your thoughts on that. I know I'm butchering this, but I can't look at my phone.
Okay, so people who aren't familiar with powerlifting should know that in some meets you walk out of the rack and in some meets you don't. So we have a device called a monolift. Which basically you just stand up, the racks swing out, and then you just squat. And it's really valuable for multiply powerlifting because with all that equipment on, walking out is very difficult. And because the gear supports your hips, you can get away with a much wider stance than you'd be able to do raw, which would be a fucking pain in the ass to get into with a walkout.
Gotcha.
There are people who believe that the walkout is part of the lift. And then there are people who believe it's not. It kind of depends on where you're competing. So in a multiply meet, you can walk out if you choose to. Like you can walk out of a monolift if you want. I don't know anybody that does at the pro level. There's just no reason to. But then if you go to like the IPF or a federation that uses uprights, you don't have a choice. You have to walk it out because that's all they have.
Yeah.
I'd say that's just a matter of opinion. I don't really have one.
Okay.
Yeah, it depends on the meet. Honestly, it depends on the meet. Like I said, I would say a lot of the purists see the walkout as part of the lift.
Yeah.
And multiply, it's just not. So we don't worry about it.
Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for answering those. Those guys will be psyched to hear it.
Yeah.
All right. Rapid fire, the medley. We're gonna do this as far as bending stuff goes, and then I'm going to throw in some lifting ones just to since we have you here. So, favorite thing to bend?
I'm going to go with horseshoes. I think they're kind of the sentimental favorite, and I like hearting them. They make good gifts.
Awesome. Have you snapped?
I mean, they're terrible gifts if something is expecting something good. You just gave them a fucked up horseshoe, but but they are cool. So I'm going to go with horseshoes. I just think it's fun.
Nice. Have you
and I made
one yet?
actually the cell phone stand that I'm using right now is.
Oh, I saw that on your Instagram.
Yeah,
that's
well,
cool.
So I can't really take credit for that. My son actually figured it out. So I had made a horseshoe. I was trying to heart a horseshoe. I was trying to heart a horseshoe.
Yeah.
But one leg came out longer than the other, and I tried to like rebend it and just couldn't get it even. So I just kind of put it to the side. And it was kind of half open. My son was like, "Dad, can I have this?" Like, yeah, go ahead. Next thing I know, a few weeks later, I see him like with his iPad in the thing as a stand. I was like, son of a bitch. So now every time I kind of mess up a heart a little bit, whenever it comes even, I just open it up and make it a cell phone stand.
Oh, that's great. That's cool.
I teach a Zoom class. I use it for my Zoom class at work.
Nice. All right.
So yeah, so horseshoes I'd say are my favorite.
Okay, cool. And hardest thing to bend for you?
I'd say right now brace bending is a bit tough just because I'm not like physically there yet.
Yeah.
Aside from horseshoes, which I realize is a brace band, but I seem to be able to get away with that a little bit more than
Gotcha. Yeah.
than the other
It's
stuff.
different. Yeah. Definitely like between the legs, the sweep on those longer bars is very weird. And,
Yeah,
it's definitely
and
different.
and also a lot of my kind of upper body dysfunction sort of comes out. Like it starts to get in the weird angles, or I don't really feel confident enough to really pull on the weight. I
Yep.
think I actually was thinking the other day that scrolling might help a lot. So
Oh, yeah.
going through, because it kind of forces you into a lot of different angles. It builds a lot of strength in sort of weird planes.
Definitely.
So yeah, I think I might at some point pick up a little bit of scrolling when I get
Sure.
back into longer stuff, just because I think it looks like a really good way to just sort of get all around strong without, like popping a ton of blood vessels trying to.
Yeah. Everybody seems to get in there eventually with the scrolling. It's so cool. I mean, and it's definitely like a good workout without the really hard, intense moments. It's more of like an evener keel. It's cool.
Yeah.
I want to do some more of it when I get some more stock. All right, strongest bending style for you.
Man, I have to say, probably cross between horseshoes and double over.
Okay.
My double under isn't far behind, but it's been really inconsistent lately.
Yeah.
So I'm only really one bend above my double under and double over. So I've done a 5/16 ungraded bolt under, and I've done a grade 5 1/4 inch over.
Nice. Yeah,
Which
yeah.
feels pretty close to me. Really, the ungraded one just feels kind of less springy. So I think that's why it's easier. But yeah, so my double under is actually close, but inconsistent. So when it's on, it's really on, but when it's not on, it's
yeah. All right, and so back to the lifting stuff. Your best lift? What were you, squatters best or?
Probably a toss up between the bench and the squat. So my best squat was, I know I'm ranked higher in the squat, but because there's a lot more people that specialize in the bench.
Yeah.
So in terms of full power lifter, I was probably a little better bencher.
Oh, okay.
My numbers were, so I did an 843 squat at 181, a 620 bench, and then a 611 pull, 611 deadlift.
Nice. And I was going to say weakest lift, but just answered it with the deadlift.
Yeah,
deadlift was the hardest one for you. Yeah. All right. Something.
And I think that was a mix of how I'm built, like lower back wise, and also it's a different lift psychologically. It's starting from a dead stop.
Yeah.
Which is a different psych, and I always found that one a little bit tougher. And maybe that's why I like the challenge of bending now, because it's very, very similar.
Interesting.
Is that kind of starting momentum from nothing?
Yeah.
Whereas with a bench or a squat, you have that eccentric kind of reverse.
Yeah.
Whereas the steel or the deadlift, you just gotta be 100% from the get go.
Yeah. I'm probably best at deadlifting. I enjoy it the most. It's my favorite lift for sure. And I haven't thought of that comparison before, but I like the idea of like just for me at least psychologically, it's almost better to just like jump into it than like feel it.
Yeah, and deadlift, I think, I was really known as a technician in the sport. I was never really known for being the strongest guy. I was known for being a good lifter. So I was able to really sort of kind of circumvent my weaknesses and find out a way to maximize my strength. And that's one of the reasons I did really well in multiply powerlifting, because, it's such a chess match. It often rewards the smartest lifter versus the strongest lifter. And, I think part of the reason that I was a better bencher and squatter is that gear is a much more integral part of the lift. Like you'll get much more carryover out of the bench press and squat. Right, and the reason is you have that eccentric phase, which stretches the gear out for you, whereas the deadlift, you don't. So you're really limited to what you can pull yourself into position with, which is just going to give you a lot less carryover. So for me, it was just being able to kind of analyze the lifts and sort of think through them and experiment with different pieces of gear that worked. I had a lot more room to grow in those two lifts because I was able to kind of think my way through them more than the deadlift. And that's another reason that steel is a nice challenge, because I mean, you can have all the technique you want, but there's just nowhere to hide with a piece of steel. You're still trying to bend a piece of steel.
It's so true. Yeah. That's cool though. I like the the intricacy of what I don't fully grasp it, but I like just thinking that like the idea of the chess match and all of that, like that it goes that deep is cool to me.
I sometimes describe it as try to make your best lift standing on the tightrope.
Yeah. Wow.
Because that's kind of how you feel. There's zero margin for error in
Yeah.
geared lifting. And then it's zero margin of error with a lift that's probably 300 pounds above your raw best, right? So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
and that's one of the things that appeal to me. Like I think there's a misconception that multiply powerlifters do it because it's easier.
Yeah.
It's not easier. We can lift more with it. One of the reasons we do it. But I think part of the appeal is because it's so challenging.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people might be surprised to learn that, just executing a multiply lift in gear that fits is a pretty big accomplishment. Like anybody can do a raw bench or a raw squat or raw deadlift. Pretty much any able-bodied person can at least do those lifts within the rules. But trying to do those with actual fitting gear is extremely difficult. Extremely difficult. I think that's also one of the reasons multiply powerlifting lost steam, is because now that we're really in the internet age and so much of this stuff is going up on social media and so much coaching is done online now, the need for the powerlifting crew has kind of gone down a bit.
Yeah.
And that's one of the main features of multiply powerlifting. You have to have that crew just because the gear is so difficult to use. You just need all those spotters. You need all the help. It helps to have a big pool of gear in the gym that you can kind of pull stuff from, the shirt doesn't work for guys, so he throws it in the pile. Well, that pile is great for the newcomers coming to the gym, right?
Yeah.
But virtually you don't have that. So I think a reason that it's declined in popularity is because it just doesn't really translate well to what's become almost an internet sport.
Yeah, right.
But I think people would be surprised to learn just how technically difficult that sport actually is.
Yeah.
Especially with super maximal weights.
Yeah, definitely. All right.
It's sort of the opposite of farm strength, right? It's the most niche strength you could possibly imagine.
Yeah, to me it's sounding like skydiving or something. Like if you were like, I'm just gonna dive without a backup parachute or something like that. It just sounds like upping the stakes like to some kind of crazy degree.
It kind of feels that way, yeah. And man, I mean, there is like, I sometimes used to joke with raw powerlifters, like, listen, if you're going to miss a weight, would you rather just sort of miss it, have the spotters take it, and then just have that polite applause? Or do you want it to be a fucking catastrophe and everyone in the crowd goes, oh my God, how did he live? Yeah. Misses and multiply are fucking terrifying. Like it's a lot of dropping the ball. Like when you miss a bench raw, you just kind of peter out and then the spotters take it. When you miss a bench and multiply, you dump it towards your face.
Oh my God.
Like once you get out of that bubble of support, there's just nothing.
Yeah.
There's just nothing holding that weight up.
Yeah, that's wild, man.
Yeah.
All right. Something outside of training, bending, strength sports in general that you enjoy doing.
I mean, lately it's just spending time with my family. And that's I don't have a whole lot of time for much else. And that's really one of the major reasons I decided to step away from powerlifting anyway. It was taking a lot of time from the family, and I probably could have rationalized it if I thought I had a lot of room to still improve, but it was starting to become apparent that I really didn't. And I thought, you know what, do I really want to spend all this time and effort and all this time away from my family for something that I can't get significantly better in?
Yeah, sure.
So that was kind of my that's kind of where I'm at now. Yeah, like I said, my son usually comes down here with me and
cool.
Kind of hangs out, and so.
Yeah. How old's your son?
He's 7.
Nice, cool.
He's 7.
Good bending partner.
Mm-hmm.
All right, what's the one bend that got away so far?
I'm gonna have to say it was that 1/2 inch by 1 inch long bar.
Okay.
Yeah, it was 1/2 inch by 1 inch, and I think 3 feet. Got a nice kink in it, and just had nowhere to go. Like, all right, now what? Like, I didn't think this through.
Yep. What about a one lift that got away?
Oh God. I got the perfect lift. It was a 700 bench.
All right. Nice.
Yeah, that was actually so when I started gaining all the weight, the reason I did it was because my back had already started becoming an issue in about 2014. And so I did the Arnold Classic or the Arnold Expo that year. Had a really good meet, actually, won my class, and then decided, you know what, I really got to take some time off and fix my back. Maybe I'll just focus on bench press for a while. And well, if I'm going to do that, I might as well just eat my way up to 700. I don't know why I thought that. And so I did it, and I had 2 meets where I missed it like here. Like all I had to do was that, and I just couldn't. I did that twice, and then all of a sudden I just said, like, what the fuck am I doing? It's not even that good a bench at 242. Like it's not going to add anything to me as a lifter. My back's starting to feel better. Maybe I should just lose the weight again and just focus on being a good full lifter. And then so that's what I did. So that's the one that got away that I'm never going to go back for.
Yeah.
I gave myself a couple shots on it, but it was one of those cases where the juice just wasn't worth the squeeze.
Yeah. All right. Interesting one for you. So who's the strongest person you know?
I'm going to give you a couple answers. So the safest answer as a powerlifter is Ed Cohen.
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
He's our Michael Jordan. He's our, maybe David Horn. Like he's just the guy that did it better than anybody else for about 30 years. I mean, he was doing, like he was setting all-time total world records in the 220, 242 class. Like there was, when he was the best of his, when he was in his era, there was nobody even close.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking over 1,000-pound squat at I forget if he did it at 220. He definitely did it at 242. 900 deadlift at like a light 220. I mean, just insane. Still very strong now. Guys in his 50s, still very strong. So as far as powerlifting goes, I probably have to give him the number one spot. Second to that, one of the most impressive people I've ever seen on the platform, and probably the one I think would be the best bender if he had gone that way, would be a guy named Chuck Vogelpohl.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if anyone's out there seen the West Side versus the World documentary.
A lot of people listening, I'm sure.
Okay, so he was a major factor in that movie.
Yeah.
Again, I'm lucky enough, and I'm lucky enough that I got to meet pretty much everybody in the movie, including Lou. So a lot of those scenes from the club's past, I actually had been to that club and met a lot of those people.
Cool.
Chuck Vogelpohl is probably the mentally strongest powerlifter I've ever met.
Wow.
At one point, he held the all-time world record with 1175, and that was not even at super heavy. Like the biggest he got was like 275.
Yeah.
He may have competed a couple pounds over it just to get the number, but he was, the biggest he was about a 275 lifter.
Yeah.
I was there when he broke the all-time record at 220, ironically, which was held by Ed Cohen. He squatted 1,000 at 220. And this is 20 years ago when that was a huge lift. Like multiply, squatting 1,000 at multiply isn't what it was.
Yeah.
But back then it was fucking enormous. So I got to be at that meet, and man, talk about electricity being in the air.
Yeah.
He is probably the most mentally focused, mentally strongest lifter I've ever met. Like one of the great stories about him is he fractured his ankle or foot at one point, showed up at the Arnold Classic in a walking cast, took the cast off, squatted, I think fucked up his foot way worse, then put the cast back on. Like just,
oh my God.
And he probably would have been the best steel bender out of every powerlifter, just because he had that just mad dog determination.
Yeah.
That just no weight was going to stop him. No weight was going to stop him. No competitor was going to stop him. Like the day he squatted 1,000 pounds, I think he opened with a PR, missed it, jumped to another weight, and then hit the that. Like it was crazy. It was just it was a what the hell time moment. Yeah, just a madman. So I think if someone had handed him a piece of steel instead of barbell back when he was young, he would be very well known in steel bending.
Yeah, wow. That's a good answer.
So those are my two answers. I said, yeah. So I said, so I thought I'd give the safe answer and then sort of give the what if answer.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a good answer. I had just listened to Louis and Hoff on a podcast the other day, and that got me all psyched up to go watch West Side versus the World again. So just like about 3 nights ago, I just watched that again. So all that stuff is fresh in my mind. And that Chuck is one intense looking dude. If that he should have been a MMA fighter.
He was.
Oh, he was he?
Yeah,
Oh,
he did
nice.
a bit on like I think he did more like a kind of a like the lower, like more almost like a tough man type circuit.
Okay, gotcha.
I don't think he was ever really a trained fighter. He was just fucking nuts.
Yeah, that's what it looked like. That's cool.
I'm reasonably sure his fights were probably won before a punch was thrown. They just got to look at Chuck and
yeah,
that was it. And the funny thing is, he's a totally chill, like soft-spoken guy outside the gym. Yeah, I've had dinner with Chuck. Like he's a very
wow.
He's just super quiet. And when you're that quiet and that intense on the platform, people kind of project whatever they want onto you. But he's a very, very good coach. I think if he was a bit more outgoing, he'd be much more respected as a coach than he actually is. He's very respected within powerlifting.
Yeah.
Just because of what he's done. He has a very good eye. He's a very good motivator, but he's not one of those guys that I think translates well into the internet era. Like he's not going to do like fucking TikTok videos and like he doesn't have an Instagram account or anything like that. So, but he is a very very respected within the sport as a coach. But again, I think people get a weird idea about it. Like, granted, you wouldn't want to fuck with him. But he's not like that all the time. If you're just like, in a fucking Outback Steakhouse with Chuck Vogel, it's going to be a very kind of typical conversation.
Nice. That's cool, man. All right. Best piece of advice you were ever given. This could be about life or strength in general.
Embrace the process.
Cool.
I think the people that make it the furthest, really in anything, but I know this from doing powerlifting, it's the people who really become students of the sport. They don't rush the process. They're really in it for the process. And I think especially when you're doing something that's hard, like steel bending is a great example. If you're not really putting the process first, you're probably not going to last very long.
Yeah.
You'll either just lose interest, or you'll get hurt and won't come back, or because at some point you'll just figure out like the goal really isn't worth it. Like do I really need a bucket of bent up nails and horses in my basement? My wife would say no. It's about what it took to do it. And I think if you kind of keep your focus on that, you're going to have a much longer, much better career, whatever you're trying to do. But I think you're also going to, get a lot more out of it as a person. I don't know if you heard the last podcast I did with Anthony.
Partway through. Yep.
Okay. I talked a lot about recently being diagnosed with ADHD in that one. And something, and I'm talking like when I say recently, I mean like a couple months ago.
Okay.
And it was a very typical way I did because my son has it. And so watching him go through the process of getting diagnosed and identifying all these behaviors, I say, hey, wait a minute, I should probably look into this. And when we were done with the testing for it, I didn't just have ADHD, I had severe ADHD. Like I'm in the 99th percentile. And part of the reason I'm searching for words a little bit is my Adderall's wearing off because I just went on that a week ago, which I recommend if you can get it.
Yeah.
But what I realized is after I took a step back from the sport, because I found this out after I retired, not before.
Yeah.
So I realized all of a sudden that I think a major reason that I was doing it was because it was giving me a lot of gratification that I couldn't really get in other means. Right.
Sure.
I never really got that far in work. Because every time I made it to like some sort of management position, eventually just the work would get overwhelming because I can't fucking focus.
Yeah.
I'd lost a lot of relationships from it because it's very difficult to be kind of present in the relationship because it's not always that you can't focus. Sometimes it's you hyper focus on other stuff. I mean, clearly you can make that case in powerlifting and steel, but when you're trying to function in a relationship with someone, that can become very, very disruptive, especially when they don't know why and you don't know why it's happening. So, looking back on my lifting career, I really realized that I got a lot out of training and competing that I was just unable to get in real life. I was able to get a lot of self-respect through it. I was able to get, the feeling of accomplishment through it.
Yeah.
And it was one of the few kind of process-oriented things that I could really just wrap my, crazy brain around. So now retiring and looking back, it gives me a feeling of confidence that I don't think I could have had if I didn't have that. If I was just constantly kind of failing in life up to this point and didn't have that one thing I could be really successful at, even with the diagnosis now, I don't think I'd be as confident in life as I am now.
Yeah.
Because now it's like, oh man, I just need to just go on this med and I can start working on my issues a little more thoroughly. That's great. But one of the reasons it's great is because I can look back on my career and think, well, you know what? I actually have what it takes to do this.
Yeah.
I was labeled lazy growing up. I was labeled as a kid that was smart but lazy in school. I never really did that well. And people thought it was because I wasn't trying. I just couldn't make it connect. But now after all this career in strength sport, I can, look back on that and think, no, I'm not lazy. I can see a plan through to the end. I can do that work. And, at this point in my life, I don't think I would have that sense if it wasn't for powerlifting. And I think a lot of us get into this because something is missing from real life.
Uh-huh.
I mean, again, why the fuck are we bending nails in our basements for hours at a time? Or why do you when this thing, when this quarantine thing finally lifts, what are you doing? Just beating other guys up for fun?
My wife says,
you and this dude are friends, but you're gonna try and kill each other for this half hour. What's that about?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think we use sport to get things that for whatever reason we can't get from quote unquote real life. And I think the best way to do that is to fully immerse yourself into the process of doing it. Forget about the goals for a while, kind of see where your training takes you if you devote yourself 100% to the training.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's probably the longest answer you've gotten for that question, but
no, that's great, man. Well, thanks for sharing that with us. And I'm glad that you're getting that straightened out. And this quote comes up almost every episode, but it's just too good not to address. Is like the Musashi quote that goes something along the lines of once you understand the way, you see it in all things. Have you heard that before?
Oh, 100%.
It's like that. Everything keeps pointing back to that. It's like once you learn to dedicate yourself to the process, it's like, I wish I could go back, now through my journey in martial arts and, other things. I wish I could go back and be a student again in high school, because I would have dedicated myself with the same intensity I have to these other things that I've been successful at. And that's what I kind of try to preach to my son about, is being strong and being a good grappler is cool, but you can take the same intensity and take this to school and take this to other stuff,
Yeah, you hit a point where you realize it's really all about applying yourself to a process.
Yeah.
The actual skills are kind of secondary, right? The skills, the techniques, anybody can learn technique, anybody can lift weights and get stronger. But I think what really separates the kind of weekend warriors from the guys at the top is that immersion in the process. We're all doing the same lifts. We're all lifting the same weights. We're all bending the same shit we get at Home Depot. There's not we're all looking at the same YouTube videos to get technique. What really separates, the people that make it from the ones that don't is the people that make it know how to apply themselves to that process 100%. And sometimes, and that doesn't just mean working hard. That also means having the maturity to step back.
Oh yeah, definitely.
When you're people kind of hear that and they assume, okay, I got to hit every workout like it's my last. No, sometimes you have to have the maturity to do what's necessary, not necessarily just what's hard.
Yeah, definitely. And the other thing that you said that I liked a lot, was why are we doing these things? Why do we have a bucket of bent steel? Why am I going to wrestle my friends and all of that? And it's like what I think is there's a lot of people lacking true struggle and physical struggle at that. There's a certain like you're put at ease if you test yourself physically.
Yeah.
It's like you're like, I'm the nicest I'm ever going to be driving home from a hard competition training at jujitsu. Like someone could cut me off and I'll just like give them a thumbs up. It's like you get all of the angst and all of the negativity out. And I wish that everybody could find something physical that they could throw themselves into and test themselves so they know what they're actually made of. Like kids just playing video games 8 hours a day, like they're not, there's like starting to sound like an old man here, but like that there's no test there. Like they're not going to have any true sense of themselves from that. It's like, and I think that's why we all can kind of like get deep into this stuff, because it's like our caveman brains. Like we just am I strong? Let me find out. Like, am I tough?
Yeah,
Let me find out.
and I think I may have said this to Anthony during our podcast, is going through that whole 20-something year career lifting. After I got that ADHD diagnosis, and I thought, oh wow, I actually have a kind of a second chance here to get some shit together now. I know something from powerlifting that most people don't know, and that's I know how far I'll go to accomplish something just because I decided to.
Yeah.
I ate like chicken, rice, and broccoli for a year trying to get down, that last weight class, and then I cut 20 pounds the day before the meet. And part of the reason was I just wanted to see how hard I could make it, just to see if I could do it. Like that last year wasn't really about the numbers anymore. It was about kind of finding out just how deep the well went before I got out. Because I took a very conservative approach most of my career. I was that guy that just liked to sort of chip away. But that last year I was like, you know what? Let me just do everything possible now, knowing that I'm probably going to destroy my body, knowing that I probably won't have much left, just because like I know I'm at the end. So let's see how far I can swim out without having to worry about the swim back. And I tell you what, when you're trying to like get to another station in life, that's a pretty useful piece of information to have. Because I don't know many people that will put themselves through the physical stress that I did. I'm talking about the bending community. Those guys are all nuts. But I mean, in like everyday life, like the average person probably wouldn't put themselves through what I would put myself through to accomplish a goal that essentially no one's going to care about but me. And I think that teaches you something. And I think
definitely,
like I said, I think you get to a point in your career doing this stuff where you just realize, oh, it was always about the work. It was never about the goal. Like the goal, like I sometimes say, the goal isn't our reason for training. The goal is our excuse to train. Because we get something out of the training. The meet is kind of just our reason to do it. But I think, and again, I think that goes back to just some of us just need this process. Like it's just doing something that is just hard to do, out there.
Absolutely, man. All right. Funniest reaction a person has had when they find out you spend your time bending things?
Most people just look at me confused. The best reaction I've gotten so far was I went to one of my son's little friend's birthdays, his little girlfriend, Cassie. And I thought it'd be cool to heart a horseshoe for her.
Nice.
And I wasn't showy about it. I wasn't like, gather around, children. I just kind of took her aside. Hey, watch this. Like, I didn't give it to her. Because no one else had seen me do it, she went around the rest of the party telling all her friends that she did it.
Oh, nice.
And of course, my ADHD autistic son's like, no, daddy did. Like, it's all right. I don't think just drop it. It's fine. So that was probably my favorite. That's probably my favorite reaction, and probably the best one.
All right, let's two-parter on that one. What was the funniest reaction a person had when they find out you smash yourself into a canvas suit to lift essentially a Toyota Corolla on your back?
You know what? I talked about it as little as possible. There's just with multiply powerlifting, there's just so much to unpack. when you're trying to explain what you do. It's just easier to just say, yeah, I lift weights and just leave it at that. Like I got nothing. I got nothing to prove to anybody. And again, part of what we said at the top of this thing is that is why like grip and bending is kind of fun because it is so accessible. Like, you tear a deck of cards for someone, like, holy shit, that guy's strong. Like I said, the 300 bench is infinitely harder. Like it's going to take the average person 100%. way more time to do that. But because it's something like just right there and it's something everyone's held and it's just, it's just cool in that way. But I kind of got over trying to explain powerlifting to people relatively early because I just realized like I can't get into a 20-minute conversation every time someone asks me how much I bench.
Now anytime I meet someone that's like, so tell me about this steel bending stuff, they're in for like a 35-minute conversation. It's like, because I'm like, well, I got into weight training and then grip and then the steel thing and then I started a podcast. I just did this with someone the other day. I'm like 40 minutes in, I'm like, they just asked like, so you're bending nails?
Pretty much. That's pretty much.
All right, in closing, who's someone you'd like to see me have on the show?
Oh man, good question. Just someone I've seen a lot on some of the Facebook groups. That'd be cool. Maybe Steve McGrenahan.
Oh yeah, we've touched base a little bit. He agreed to do it. He's got a little bit of like a new work schedule or something, but that's a good reminder to check back in where he's at.
He'd be a good one. I've like spoken about a tiny bit on Facebook. Usually like a good job on something, but he seems to have been around for a long time.
Oh yeah.
Very well rounded in strength. Like I've seen some of the training videos. Like he's a very well rounded strong man.
Yes.
And he's fun to listen to.
Definitely.
Like that'd be kind of cool.
He might
two
have
other
been
guys. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I think Steve. I forget who said it on their episode, but he might have been the first guy to snap a red nail. Actually.
Interesting. I remember I saw the one with Jed, and I think he mentioned Steve a couple times. So
it was probably that one.
Because Jed's been around forever too. So two more guys that you might want to talk to. They're kind of peripherally in bending, but they're also very well known in the strength community at large, and they're fun interviews because they're both nuts. One would be CJ Murphy.
Oh, I don't know that name.
So he works. He owns a gym called TPS.
Okay.
Total Performance Sports. That's in Malden, so right outside of Boston.
Okay.
Longtime strongman, powerlifter. He's done a little bit of steel bending. I think he actually got into it a little bit recently because he saw me doing it.
Oh, nice.
Been in the industry forever. He'd be fun.
Cool.
The other one is a guy named Steve Pulcinella.
Okay, nice. I like when I get names I don't know.
He's fairly well known in the old time strength community. He's actually very well known in the old time strength community. So like, again, longtime strongman, Highland Games athlete, nice. But very much into like the sort of the old time strong. Like he used to go to the strongman dinner in Jersey.
Yeah, nice.
Every year.
Yeah.
And again, both these guys are hysterical. They're going to be fun interviews just because they're both nuts.
Cool.
And they got some good stories to tell.
I like it.
Yeah. So awesome. They're the first time I saw those two meet was like.
Oh, that's cool.
it was like when they became best friends in Step Brothers, like Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly. Do we just become best friends?
Yeah, exactly.
That was those two.
Yeah, I think that's when anybody meets another steel bender.
Yeah.
I got some nails in the back seat. Yeah.
You want to come through the garage?
Yeah. All right. So tips and advice for beginner benders, but I also wanted you to comment on beginner lifters in this case.
I think my answer would be the same in master technique first.
Okay. Cool.
It's all going to come down to technique. I mean, try to bend like a 60 penny here and then try it here. It's just I mean, learn a technique first. It's just going to save you so much injury. It's going to save you so much frustration. It's going to be like, I mean, my bread and butter in powerlifting was being a technician. And yeah, I mean, and let's face it, that's why nail bending has gotten as extreme as it has in the past years. Guys have figured out how to do it with the best technique possible, right?
Yeah. Definitely.
So I would say master technique. And also another thing I would say is, don't, again, this is not great advice now when we're in a fucking quarantine, but seek people out better than you, and actually, if you can, actually go there. Like there's no God, I'm gonna do the back in my day shit. But all right, here we go. So, back when I started the sport, there was no social. There was barely an internet. I mean,
Yeah,
I
right.
like when I started the shit, we were in the dial-up days. So, being able to learn from people better than you meant actually just going there and training with them. So I think
Yep.
that's kind of a lost element of strength sport now. And once we're able to, I think that would be a great thing to see people kind of getting back to, because
Interesting.
there's just no replacement for just in-person instruction.
Because
It's just
in the grappling community, that's still very much a thing. I would actually travel down to Huntington, Long Island to train with my other coach, Krishna, because you want that firsthand interaction. It's not really something you can get much coaching online or whatever. So I wonder if we'll see more, if we'll see that develop more with strength sports. That's certainly something I would do. Like I would travel to go meet with a strength coach one-on-one.
I've flown to another state to work out.
Yeah, I
Like
would do
that. I
that
mean,
for
those
sure.
initial trips to West Side, my first few years in the sport.
Yeah.
I mean, I think those are really what set my career on the trajectory it took, with those initial visits. Because there's something that people don't really some people don't really take advantage of, in that being in an environment where people are much, much stronger than you drastically changes your perception of what strong is.
Yeah.
And I don't think seeing it done on video is quite the same.
Yeah.
And I don't even think seeing it in person in isolated instances is quite the same. There's something extremely powerful about training day in and day out with people who are better than you.
Yeah.
Because what it does is it just raises the bar for what is strong.
Yep.
I mean, there's a guy named Alex Kovac. He recently squatted the world record at 165.
Okay.
I believe the lift was 930 pounds. I'll repeat, at 165. He was 20, maybe 21.
Yeah.
Only been lifting a couple years.
Yeah.
But he trains with Dave Hoff and
Yeah.
Anthony Oliveira. So by training with the current world record holders and a bunch of guys chasing that same world record holder, and by listening to them, it just vastly changed what his perception of strength was. I mean, if you really think about it, like, why wouldn't he think it was possible to set a world record? Because he's training with a guy who set him damn near every meet he competes in. So being around people who are much, much better than you
That's all right. We got you.
Sorry, just my low power mode. I got to plug.
Yeah.
So just being in that environment day in and day out is extremely powerful, and that's one of the real thing. And you go back in the old days of West Side, they credit their environment with producing those lists more than anything else. I mean, anybody can follow the training. Yeah. I mean, there's powerlifters following the West Side training protocol all around the world.
Sure.
But I mean, why this one tiny club in Ohio just churn out so many world records using essentially the same program everybody else is using? I mean, Louis is making videos, he's writing articles. Everybody knows what they were doing. Yeah. But it was that crazy environment where you just like, all right, let me get 10 of the strongest, craziest dudes in the world together. Yeah. And have them fight it out. Yeah. No. And that's a big element from the documentary, but there's no reason you can't create that elsewhere. And it doesn't have to be as extreme as that. I think there's certainly times they went over the line in that pursuit. But like I said, there's no replacement for constantly being in the presence of people who are where you're trying to get. It just makes that road seem so much more attainable, especially in a sport that's as psychologically demanding as steel bending. I think that's a little bit of a lost, I don't want to call it an art, just going to visit somebody, but it's definitely a lost element of strength sport is that in-person element.
Absolutely. We saw the same thing over the last few years in jiu-jitsu. So Renzo Gracie Academy in Manhattan produces the best guys, period. And guys go there with minimal training and become world champions with wild amount of years. We're talking very few years to become a very elite level, and that's strictly to do with that room full of killers. It's like the west side of grappling, and it's 100%. You're right with your point.
Yeah, and then there comes a point where it doesn't even have that much to do with the instructor anymore.
Yeah, no.
So like it's not like, you know, it's not like Gracie Jiu-Jitsu is new. It's not like people don't know what they're doing. Like the techniques have been out there for years, but obviously having a very, very accomplished coach is big, but I would argue that having that room full of freaks to feed off of, that's every bit as important.
Definitely.
Not to mention what all those freaks learned for themselves along the way. So now rather than having one really experienced coach guiding you, you've got 10 that are still maybe not quite as good, but a hell of a lot better than you were, and chronologically closer to where you were, because they're you know, on their way up too.
Right. All right. Where can people find you as far as social media stuff goes?
I don't have any of this shit tied into like my business. I just kind of like work. So it's Dave Kirschen at Instagram. That's kind of the only one I really use.
Okay, cool. All right. Any events, brands, or gear you want to shout out? Also, make sure you shout out your book.
Oh yeah. So I wrote. Again, this is the most niche book ever. I wrote a book. I actually have a couple of books, but this isn't what I care about. I wrote a book. It's called Gear, and it's basically a complete introduction to the sport of multiply powerlifting versus equipped powerlifting.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things that I've written a lot of training books professionally. Like and by the way, this is a great sign that I had ADD, because I failed Composition 100 in college and then like had a bunch of books published. So
that sounds about right.
By the way, I looked up the instructor that failed me. He didn't publish shit. So that's not that I'm holding a grudge.
He also didn't lift anything.
Yeah. So there you go. I showed him. God, I fucking lost track again. So the book, it's called Gear, and I decided to make it free. Well, I did two things. It's something I had been working on for a while, and I thought I was just going to release it as an ebook. To sell like any other. And I had worked on and off for a couple of years, and just kind of like multiply. It's such a small sport. Like I couldn't figure making a whole lot of money on this thing.
Yeah.
And one of the issues I faced was, I was sponsored by Elite FTS. It's a fairly popular powerlifting company. Yeah. And at the time, they only sold gear from a company called Metal Sport. So I'd only really been using one brand of gear for like the last 8-10 years or so. So there's a lot of stuff in the market that I really couldn't speak with authority on because I just hadn't used it. So what I did was I invited a whole bunch of other people. Anthony was one of them.
Cool.
And I invited about 10, 12 other very high level lifters and coaches to write different sections and kind of fill in the blanks that I couldn't. It fluffed up to about just under 500 pages. So it became a lot bigger than I expected it to. And I just released it for free. So it's available. It's just a link to my Google Drive, where you can just download the PDF. It's in the bio for my Instagram.
Okay, cool.
And then I posted on Facebook a few times, but I'm not on Facebook a whole lot. It's better to get me on Instagram. Yeah. And so it was kind of, it was sort of my way of getting right with leaving the sport during the period I did, because in powerlifting in general, but especially multiply, there's this real sense of you got to give back to the sport when you get to the point that you're able to. And when I was sponsored by Elite FTS, it's owned by Dave Tate, who was Westside lifter for a long time, then kind of went out to do his own thing. He lives by the mantra of live, learn, and pass on. Yeah. In all aspects, but especially in lifting. And when I first retired, I figured that I would kind of stay on and do the coaching thing. But then, of course, the pandemic started, and I really couldn't get back to that. And I'm still not going to the gym because since I work one-on-one with people hands-on, I really can't expose myself to any extra risk.
Sure.
I actually had to just quarantine for 5 days because I got exposed.
Yeah.
Never didn't get it because, unfortunately, we're all on my shit. But just kind of reinforce just how easy it is to get into a bad position. So I don't go to commercial gyms anymore. I don't go to the powerlifting club anymore. So, putting this book out was a way for me to kind of be right with retiring and still being able to kind of give back and do something to maybe help the next generation.
Cool, man.
Yeah. So I have a lot of fitness-based books also. You can just look me up by name. They're not great. They're they're very basic. They're very basic weight training books. I think they're good for beginners, but it's not something I'd maybe recommend to someone who wants to bend or powerlift or any of that.
Not for the psychos. All right.
Yeah, not for the psychos.
All right, David. That's it, man. I appreciate it. I love this conversation.
Yeah, this is really good, man. When this whole thing, we're not that far. When this whole thing blows over, we should get together do a workout or two.
Absolutely. And Tom Flesher and Devin Hoover are both on Long Island. There's
they're
another
New Yorker
guy.
Guys.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Now, Tom is originally from Buffalo, but he's down. He's a professor on the island, and Devin is just down there for med school. But and then there's another guy in Queens or something like that. So there is some guys around.
Who's in Queens?
He doesn't have a social media presence, but I know he made it out to Don's competition last year. Maybe Anton something. I can't remember the name.
I know that there were a bunch of guys in Jersey for a few years. I know.
Yeah, there's some grip guys in Jersey, and I'm not sure of any benders down there. But yeah, we'll see how things open up, man.
Yeah, I
because
think
I was just
Sunny. I think Sunny Barry is there.
Okay.
I think Eric Moss, who you interviewed, is a Jersey.
Yeah,
guy.
he's in Jersey. Yep. And Chris Ryder's in like Philly or something, or somewhere near there.
I think he's in York. I think he's around York.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I actually saw it was in the. I saw him in the. I saw his YouTube videos, but he was also in that Steel Bender movie, which I'm sure everybody.
Oh yeah,
in the community scene. That was actually pretty cool because I've competed at York. Like, God, I lost count how many times I've been there.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, we'll see how things open up because I'd like to do some type of live competition or something or event. We'll see. Let's hope for the best for the future, man.
Definitely. But until then, we'll all be in our basements.
That's it.
Ruining various hardware.
That's it. All right, David. That's it, man. Have a good rest of the night.
It was a lot of fun, man. Thanks for having me on.
All right.
Take care.